After all, Reform has just put a 19-year-old now, because he's just had his birthday, bless him, in charge of Warwickshire County Council. Although he's technically not the leader yet, but he has put out a very hilarious op-ed piece about why no one should dare stand in his way and how he is so brilliantly experienced. We'll probably get to that another time, maybe this week. However, another key point that Reform UK, of course, ran on was that they were going to bring the change, that they were going to be the ones who brought change forward and going to be enabling you to make sure that they were not wasting your money on the council. So, what is this child's first it's rude to call him a child, teenager, young adult maybe, who decides to, run and think he's enough experience to run a council? I am going to bring in outside political assistance to help me run the council, when these positions already exist, and he's now going to cost you, if you happen to live in that area, an extra 190k per year. I think you can see why this is a bit funny and a bit ironic, coming from someone from Reform UK who ran on a platform of wanting to cut political waste. Anyway, before we do get on into this, please, of course, do remember that you can, of course, click on the like, share, and the subscribe button as well. And, of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and, of course, as always, there are the links down below to the Patreon, the Buy Me Coffee, I've said that before, I'm doing it again. I'm repeating myself and I didn't realize. Anyway, but thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel this way. So, as always, let's crack on before we get sidetracked anymore. So, on, of course, into this. So, this comes from the Warwickshire Woes. The title of Reform UK leader now defends a 190k per year plan to bring in political assistance at Warwickshire County Council. Anyway, the interim leader of Warwickshire County Council defends plans to bring in political assistance covering 190k a year in the face of outrage now from other parties. So, Cllr George Finch from Reform UK has now confirmed that he will investigate the proposals that will be considered by all councils next week. This could now see the biggest of three parties at Shire Hall, Reform, the Liberal Democrats, and the Conservatives, now have a dedicated council officer to undertake research and provide administrative support to members of the political groups in the discharge of their council functions, although the Lib Dems have now spoken out to object to the idea. And bear in mind, this is done because you already have people in the council, and we'll get to the reason why he's justifying this in a moment. And it is so dumb, because there is stuff to allow this, but it costs money. And here's the thing, during austerity, a lot of councils got rid of these positions because it was just too expensive to do. And the kicker why he's bringing this in is funny, but we'll leave that punchline for when we get to it. National, of course, legislation does allow councils to employ at least up to 3 people, one for each of the largest political groupings, to have at least 10% of the seats available. No party can, of course, have more than one political assistant, irrespective of the size. These assistants would, of course, be very politically restricted in most of the ways that other council officers are, would, of course, be allowed to speak to the public with the intention now of affecting support for a political party, and of course publish work or any other material intended to affect public support for a political party, provided, of course, they do not give the impression they directly represent that party. This, to me, the way that is being described, as you'll see in a moment, is they just want a PR officer. And in this guy, as you'll see in a moment, the way he justifies it is hilarious. Anyway, these would, of course, be full-time jobs within the council. And it is anticipated that these overall costs and the salary plus the employee's expenses would be between 150,000 to 190,000 across all these three roles, dependent on which end and relevant salary band the candidates, of course, came in. This would now be an addition now to the council's budget set out in February. The report says the council's executive director for resources, Robert Powell, would identify options now for meeting the costs for the remainder of the financial year and try to determine the most appropriate funding source in consultation with all relevant group leaders. Costs beyond that would now have to eat into the council's already restricted budget. It, of course, just comes 2 weeks after which Reform UK Cabinet now unanimously accepted principles set out in the council's own medium-term financial plan, which would include the assertion in which it would, quote, be necessary now to set a very high bar for new permanent budget allocations. So, hey, we've got to expect a good, bar, right? We've set the bar high for, if we need to set any new budgetary stuff, here's the bar. Not here, it's here now, guys. We've got to pass it. Trust me, as you're about to see, he has put this bar very low for his excuse for wanting this. However, interim leader, Cllr George Finch, who will, of course, seek the permanent position at the full council meeting on Tuesday before promoting this idea, insisted it was required because current council staff have, quote, been unable to help come up with imaginative ideas to resolve the issues related to special needs education and home to school transport and the rapidly declining apprenticeship opportunities and many more pressing issues. So essentially what that says to me, because we've seen this type of stuff before, whenever you've seen one of these reform people say this, it basically means I want to cut stuff, or I'm telling them to cut stuff, but they are not playing ball with me. They are refusing to do this. They are not doing what I am hoping that they would do. So I need now to bring in someone from the outside to basically tell them to do that. That's what he wants. That's what he wants. That is what he's accusing now of these council workers. I'll tell you now, if I worked for Warwickshire County Council, I would be very annoyed that your new political leader has basically said you are not imaginative enough to come up with any creative solutions to the crises we are currently doing. I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry, Finchy, but they've been working their asses off for years under conservative austerity, trying to keep all these things running with increasing demand and ever lessening resources. And for you to turn around and just say, these people just aren't imaginative enough is an insult to everyone who works in those departments. I'm sorry. It is an absolute insult. Councillor Finch, who was then approached for comment, but offered a written statement instead, said that by trying to establish these political assistant roles, we can now begin to work more effectively to bring about the change we have mandated for. Because I need someone who will tell them this is how you want to do it. Yeah, not going to happen. He said the definition of insanity is to do the very same thing over and over again and expect different results. And for far too long, the council has now remained entrenched in its views about how we should govern. Those have now yielded poor results. For years, the council administration has now relied on the corporate policy team to come up with innovative ideas to reshape and shepherd Warwickshire through the crises that we face. We have found this team now to be unreliable and unable to bring the change about we were elected for. Basically, I want them to do cuts. I want them to save money, but they are refusing to do the stuff I want them to do. This is where I wish that these council officers weren't as restricted as they were, because I guarantee you, these people on that corporate policy team have seen this and are absolutely fuming. Absolutely fuming. And I would love to hear one of them speak out. It would cost them their job, but I guarantee you they are absolutely fuming about this. Absolutely fuming. He said we need, of course, new, fresh, bold approach to policy creation in Warwickshire. Establishing political assistant roles will, of course, help equip the main three political groupings with the tool required to find innovative solutions. Basically saying the council and the policy team aren't good enough. What a way to motivate your staff there. So, will it go through? The plan will, of course, go before the council to be voted, of course, in a normal way. With reform not having a majority support, or at least no dissent will be required from at least one other political group. And of course, in the likely leadership battle, the Conservatives do appear to be kingmakers, with the leader, Councillor Aidan Warwick, confirming the group would be discussing the matter on Friday, indicating that they would need to understand the merits prior to taking action. I don't know if they've discussed this anymore. I don't know if they've changed their mind on this. I wouldn't want this to go through. Why would you? But there you go. That will, of course, decide which way this goes, with, of course, the Lib Dems, the Greens, and Labour all confirming they will vote against this. Speaking prior to Finch's statement, the Liberal Democrat council leader Jeremy Roadhouse said, "I would rather spend that £150,000 on family support workers or something that is useful in the community." Bravo, that person, for saying that. The report, of course, is very clear. We do not have the money, and if we did, I would much rather it be spent on front lines to support residents, not political assistance. This is not the sort of thing that we are going to support. My hope would be that the other political groupings would, of course, rather see that money spent on frontline services, not on political assistance. All political party groups should be focused on the front line. As the fourth biggest group, the Greens would not, of course, get an assistant, but Councillor Jonathan Clives said, highlighting how much Reform UK, of course, stood on a platform for more effective use of taxpayers' money. His statement said, "I'm very surprised that the very first formal policy from Warwickshire Reform is now brought forward is now to spend more than 100k extra a year on more support for politicians. Their claim to voters was that they would cut wasteful council spending, and yet their very first proposal does the exact opposite. Actions always speak louder than words." Labour leader Sarah Finchley also echoed those statements, saying, "We are not going to support this. Given that, of course, there are a time in, of course, of massive cuts to services to try and balance the books, this seems like a very unnecessary expense. These roles were, of course, cut soon after austerity back in 2010 on the basis that they could not really be afforded. Reform is the largest group, and if they want someone, I'm sure they could find a way to fund it themselves from their own group's money." The report also said that no appointments can be made until the posts have, of course, been established for all qualifying groups. So, if approved, Chief Executive Monica Fogarty will, of course, have to delegate the authority to work with the groups and the leaders on the framework under which these assistants would, of course, be employed. I am thinking these people would not be employed, or at least could be stopped by the Lib Dems if they so wished. I think they could. I think they very, very much so could on that front. It would be interesting to see which way this goes. Will this go through? I highly suspect, honestly, it will not. I'd be very surprised if this goes through. But if it does go through, you can, my word, you could just turn around and, Farage recently got savaged on the BBC after the mayor in Scarborough got a 600% pay rise. How does this look to Reform UK's plan, where they're spending 190k extra for support for politicians, people who they claimed are like way better? Should they not need all these political assistance? But oh no, that's right. I suspect that the way, shall we say, Councillor Finch has worded his statement in such a way leads me to think he is asking these council workers to do some really dumb stuff, which basically leads me to think he wants to cut a load of stuff, and they can't because they're saying, "Oh no, we can't," and that's what's leading them to say, "Oh, they're just not imaginative enough." Yeah. Well, there you go, Warwickshire. That's your Reform County Council. I hope you're happy with it, because I wouldn't be. Oh, I wouldn't be. I'll tell you that now. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.